Big Blue Book Club presents Snack Club with Courtney Luecking and Anna Cason, featuring raising a happy, healthy eater and how to raise a mindful eater. Now, here are our hosts.
Feeding children is an adventure, and at some point or another, you might have had questions like, am I doing this right? Or is this normal?
Headlines, things we see online, things we hear from family and friends, and even unpacking what we see in the store can have us questioning what to feed our children. We want children to have what they need to lead happy, healthy lives, and it seems like as soon as we figure something out, it changes.
That's where we come in. My name is Dr. Courtney Luecking. I'm a registered dietitian and extension specialist for family and child nutrition. This means I have lots of training and expertise about child nutrition. I also have two littles of my own. This combination allows me to talk through practical, science-based strategies for creating a nourishing feeding environment for your family.
And my name is Anna Cason. I'm a registered dietitian and extension associate in food and nutrition. I don't have kids of my own, but my interests and passion lie in supporting healthy food-related behaviors, which begin in childhood.
In partnership with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Services, we present Snack Club, where we share bite-sized bits of information for supporting nourished, active children in Kentucky.
So come for the snacks and stay for the support.
Okay.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Anna. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
We switched it up. You got me.
Mm-hmm.
This episode might feel a little different.
Yeah. Started off from the beginning.
I love it. So we previously talked about successful meal times and a lot about structure and boundaries. But I don't want us to get too far from the fact that we want food to be pleasant.
Yeah.
You and I talk about and think about food a lot. It's just part of our jobs. And so we don't want people to think we're too nuts. And that's all we want them to talk or think about. So we really are here to talk about some fun aspects of mealtime and how to make it what you want it to be. So first, I want to pose a question to you and those who are listening. I want you to think about this as well. What is a fond or memorable mealtime that you can look back upon, whether as an adult or a child?
I would probably say not like a specific date that I have in mind, but whenever we were younger, we used to go to my granddad's house every Sunday for Sunday dinners, and our cousins would be there, and so it was a nice ritual that we did weekly.
So tell me more about who all was there?
So it was my dad's side of the family, so my granddad on my dad's side and his siblings and then their kids, so my cousins, and he had a huge backyard. So we would get there early. We would eat at 6 o'clock on the dot every week.
Okay.
It was very structured.
Okay.
So we would get there early and the kids would play in the backyard with the wagon and the ball and soccer ball and all the things. We would have our playtime, and then 6 o'clock on the dot, we would gather around and serve ourselves.
Okay.
And then we would sit at the kids' table. The kids would sit together, and then the adults were in the dining room.
I still feel like I should sit at the kids' table.
It's much more fun. It truly is, honestly.
Yeah, I think we still do that. Generationally, I'm like, oh, there's the little kids, and then there's the big kids table.
The kids who are still kids.
Yeah. I love that. What else about that? So it sounds like the people were really memorable. Is there anything else that you look back upon those meals and you're like, that's what made it so special or so lovely?
So we didn't have the same thing every week, but there was definitely a menu. My granddad was very set in his ways, so he had the foods that he liked. So it was always the same-ish foods, just in a different rotation. And they're foods that I still make today for my husband and I. So
it's so sweet. Okay, so really impactful, a Sunday evening. And what I'm hearing you talk about a lot of the elements that were brought up in the books that we read about rituals and maybe feeling gratitude and family meals, so people gathering together. So maybe let's talk about rituals and what that means. Because I think in some of our minds, it sounds very strict or rigid or only with special occasions. So, based on what we read and your thoughts, what does rituals mean when it comes to mealtime?
So I think part of it was the like rigid side of it, the structured, like I mentioned, it was the same time every week. But also we had the ritual of saying grace at the beginning of the meal. So we all got together for that. And then at the end of it, the kids would help clean up the kitchen. And then we would all like share our gratitude before we left. We would thank Popo, or my granddad. So it was just it was a very pleasant experience all around.
Yeah, so these are small ways that we can build ritual into every day. So you talked about saying grace, and that can mean a lot of things or different things to a lot of people. But that can also signify to children who maybe are busy playing or easily distracted during meals. That might help them, or maybe it's a special song that you all like. But letting children know like it is time to eat. And actually, this is really evident in preschool childcare settings. They oftentimes will have a song or something that they recite, whether it's grace, and so it all just kind of like it's childcare, preschool. They're amazing. They're magical. They wrangle all the children, but that's one way to kind of signify. And same thing, you could bookend it, like you said, gratitude. Those could be rituals, or you talked about how you all contributed to it. So you served yourselves. You helped clean up at the end. So there are steps in all throughout the process that we could include children. That would be kind of a routine or ritual, if we want to call it that.
Almost like a good habit to get into for now when they're younger, and then also to carry on into adolescence, adulthood.
Yeah. So what are some of the other small ways that children could be a part of that process of getting the meal either to the table or setting the table?
Yeah. Well, that's one way, depending on their age, of course, and the equipment that they should use. They could help set the table. They could help in the kitchen. They can help ahead of time at the grocery, helping to pick out food, or helping in that planning process and deciding what part of the meal they want to contribute to, and then getting them involved in the kitchen, helping actually set the table and serve themselves. And then also at the end, just having an understanding that when we are finished with our meal, kids can bring the plates to the sink or to the dishwasher, or they can scrape the food off into the compost or the trash and then help wipe down whatever. So having that ritual or that habit kind of instilled.
Yes. And as you were talking, the words rhythm and routine were coming to my brain. Yes. And I feel like our family has finally gotten to that, at least for now. Now that we have like a 19-month-old, it's like, okay, we've made it through the phase of like, she's always wanting to nurse when it's time for me to eat or things like that. And so we do have this nice rhythm and flow. And so figuring out how children can contribute, and that also kind of, sets up for the mealtime and moves on. And I'm just thinking when you're talking about the table, if some kids are really artistic, some are really, and that could be like drawing, or that might be music. So maybe it is creating in fact, beautiful space for the table, whether they color placemats or create some sort of centerpiece or the music, maybe selecting music to have play in the background. There's some scientific evidence that the books kind of hinted on, but that like the atmosphere within which we surround ourselves when we eat can influence kind of what we eat or how much.
Creating that ambiance.
Ambiance,
Mood
yes,
lighting,
yes.
mood music.
Set your mood at home, dim the lights. No, we're just kidding. It is odd though when you're in restaurants and all of a sudden like the lights dim and you're like, what is happening?
Are they cooking us out?
I know, I've never been out that late. No, I'm just kidding. All right, the rituals. Let's also talk about gratitude. What are, if we're having a rough day, it can feel kind of challenging. So what are some ways we can build gratitude into our
I think one of
routine?
the like obvious ways is to show the appreciation for the food that is on the plate or on the table, because it can take a lot to get there. So just being grateful that one, you have food in front of you, and for the process that it's gone through, and for the preparation that it's taken from caregivers and kids if they've been involved too. So like vocalizing it, verbalizing it.
I like that. And it's such a small token of appreciation. But again, when we find gratitude or participate in gratitude practices, that can have a lot of positive effects on our mental health. And
it can go a long way.
it can. And so maybe that is part of your grace that you say, or just, you said, expressing, or like simple as last night, I came home and my husband had, he made quiche for dinner. Our oldest had been requesting that. And so I was like, oh, it smells so good. And he opened the oven. He was so proud. There were two. There was one that was more veggie heavy, one that had a little bit more meat in it. So he was like honoring our taste preferences, but just sitting there, I said, thanks for dinner, Dad. This is really good. You know, simple as that. And like acknowledging, I appreciate your work to pull this together for us. So
So I think that's a great way to show gratitude for the food. But then you can also show your gratitude for something that's not food related. And maybe everyone shares something that they are thankful for that happened during the day, or something they're proud of that they did or that they witnessed happen during the day. So showing that gratitude and just really creating that like uplifting environment, that positive environment surrounding mealtime.
And I love that as an opportunity to try to get a window into what's going on in children's lives, because I feel like the older they get, they do more on their own. So you don't have kind of the constant updates of like, your child ate this and went to nap at this time. You know, it's like, how was your day? Fine.
I will say,
so
I remember my mom picking us up from elementary school, and she would always ask how our day was, and that's how we responded. It was fine. It was good. No details. I don't know what happened during the day, but yeah, it was fine.
So, but if I told you, tell me something great that happened today, you can't just say it was fine.
It was fine.
Or you could say it.
It was fine.
You would hopefully say, although my oldest right now, she's in the phase where she's like, nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, nothing. Your camp was horrible today. You got to jump on inflatables and eat ice cream. It was awful. And then she just gives me this like smirk, half smile, side eye, like, I'm on to you. I'm like, oh no.
I love the idea of, we do it now whenever I go to my parents for mealtime with my siblings, like doing peaks and valleys, or roses and thorns, or highs and lows. So really thinking about the great thing that happened during your day, and then maybe something that was like kind of a downer. And at a mealtime a while ago with a friend and her nephew, who is like 5, he was like, you have the rose and then the thorn and then the stem. And the stem is something that it was like fine, but it's like you're kind of looking forward to it. It happened. It was just like in the water. It's like, okay, a little 5-year-old came up with this new concept. He's a deep thinker.
Why? We've got like a wise old soul there.
Yeah.
I love that. Kind of also like grounding, right? It's your stability.
Yeah.
That's like you were talking. It's like, oh, thinks about stability. And I think it's important, you know, again, we're not trying to paint it all roses and rainbows or unicorns. And so knowing that that creates a support system. And notice that like a lot of these things that we're talking about are not about food. We talk about food a lot because that's our job, and it doesn't always have to be about food. So wanting to just really make that obvious, that we can make meal times pleasant, not only with the flavors of what we eat, but just again, what's happening around that. Although, I'm kind of laughing, rolling my eyes in my head. So like, this sounds great. And sometimes it will happen and sometimes it won't, right?
Reality.
Right. But again, those rituals, those routines, getting people together. So not everything needs to be about food. And I think that ties into holidays, which was in one of the chapters, that a lot of our holidays are about food, but what could it look like if they were less about food?
So kind of shifting the focus away from food, even though we're not saying to take food off the table, but I always think about Thanksgiving, because I feel like that is the food holiday, thinking about the big feasts on the table. So again, kind of just taking the focus off food and sharing what you are thankful for that happened in your day or your week, or something that you're looking forward to, or getting kids involved with like making a centerpiece for the table, getting their creative side, or making placemats or something. And again, it's incorporating something into the mealtime, but it's not, we're not focusing on the food.
Right. And it could be beyond. I think one of my favorite memories was our flag football games growing up on Thanksgiving. But at a certain point, they got a little too aggressive. Like people were jamming fingers. And so I think it ultimately
Yeah.
faded
We
away.
used to do kickball on Mother's Day. So, but same thing. It was always adults versus kids. And then the kids got old enough that they were starting to beat the adults. And that's when we stopped playing.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. But see, these are things like these rituals that we associate with holidays. So it could be totally random.
Yeah.
Whether you like turkey trots, we've always enjoyed those as well. Or lately and our holidays have looked different because we moved away from a lot of our family. And so the feelings that I had about holidays growing up, it's been kind of this tough transition, but it's also been freeing.
Yeah.
Like, what do we want our holidays to look like? And so the
You can
food is,
create your own
Yes.
traditions now.
yes, the food is not at all the same. And it often is like, let's get this already
Yeah.
prepared from this other
Yeah.
place. Cause wow, that food was great, but I don't want to be in the kitchen all
Yeah.
day preparing it.
Yeah.
So knowing that there's other ways to tie in, and it's still okay to like have food be a central
Yeah.
piece to the holidays too.
Yeah.
So we're not saying, oh my gosh, just forget about the candy at
Yeah.
Halloween, forget about the pumpkin pie and Thanksgiving.
cake.
Yeah, that's not it at all. So, let's talk about how holidays is a great way to think about it, especially that season towards the end of the year. But
Yeah.
even just incorporating these foods that we are just so delicious, and how to do it in a way that still meets within, we're supporting the nourish, nutritious diet, and we still get to have that pleasure and experience of foods.
Yeah. So really thinking about sweets, sweet treats, essentially.
Mhm.
Everyone loves sweets. Our bodies just like sugar. So incorporating that in, the book suggests including like dessert as part of the meal. So instead of separating dinner and dessert, having dessert on the side, and then just neutralizing that it is a sweet treat, but it's also just like a part of the meal.
Mhm.
It contributes something to that meal also.
Yeah. And I think where there can be some struggle is like, how much do we, I'm going to use air quotes, let children eat? Because again, children, that their role is to determine whether and how much to eat of something. How much or how often we offer these foods. And so maybe we can talk through, there was a really nice chart in the How to Raise a Mindful Eater.
Yeah.
And they called this, I think it was something about goodie management plan or
Yeah.
something, but a flexible goodies policy. So yes, one approach is serving a small portion with dinner and just building it in there. Another was this 90-10 rule. So maybe children get to choose a certain number of goodies, and it doesn't have to be sweets. Like like you said, most of us have more of a sweet tooth, and it could be more of those salty, savory things, exactly, that we include, and letting kids choose what they like. Or maybe it's a once a day policy, or maybe it's a couple times a week policy. The word policy sounds so formal, but like the boundaries. For thinking about boundaries about incorporating these foods. And so there is no one right approach, and what might work for a while might not at another time. And I can just speak to that with my oldest. Like, sweets weren't really a thing growing up. We just didn't introduce them, and therefore they became less of a thing. And then she got out into the world and they became more of a frequently exposed thing, and really liked the taste, and then kind of like hit a peak of just like really wanting to eat these foods. And so figuring out what that looks like for us, we have tried incorporating it with dinner, and that seems to go pretty well. Or even earlier in the day, I know one of the books said those suggestions, but that has helped. Like when she had a treat at her summer camp this week, it was an easy reminder about like, oh, well, you already had a treat today, so we can have another one tomorrow.
Yeah, I think they use the example of having cookies and milk as a snack, so that it's not like something that they are waiting their whole day for at the end of the night after they finish all their other meals and snacks. Then they get to have the sweet treat, but just, sweets can be a part of any balanced and nourishing diet.
Yeah, and non-contingent on did you eat your vegetables? Like I know for a while she was like, I ate my vegetables, and I just responded, having dessert has nothing to do with eating all your vegetables.
Not using it as a reward or
So just kind of like being clear about why or when we're incorporating it. Yeah. And so again, there might be some pushback. So it goes back to those boundaries. And depending on the age of your child, it might be working together to decide what makes sense right now. And then just helping remind kids again how they feel like, and if you want to eat it, that's great. Let's really enjoy it. But if you don't like it, like, let's not wait, like, let's figure out something else that would bring more joy or pleasure to eat.
Yeah.
And I know we've done that a couple of times where you take a bite, or I have had those things when you like eat something from your childhood and you're like, this, oh, I loved having these in my lunchbox. And then I'm like, wait a second, this does not taste at all like I remember it.
Yeah.
So disappointing.
Yeah, it is. I love in the How to Raise a Mindful Eater, Principle 3, they have a quote at the beginning, and it's from Evelyn Tribole, and it says, if you don't love it, don't eat it. And if you love it, savor it. So like really being in the moment and enjoying whatever the food is.
Yeah. And I think that plays really well into the holidays. Again, instead of doing like, oh, it's so bad, or I'm moving off course, or talking to children about food and that way, or even just around them in that way, kiddos can pick up on that. Enjoying it. Like, oh my gosh, you only make this once a year? Yes, I'm going to eat it. And then I'm going to eat it for breakfast with coffee the next morning. Like,
leftovers 3 to 5 days.
Exactly. So really just thinking about the pleasure of the taste, kind of looping back in what we talked about earlier, the pleasure of the company, the pleasure of the mood, or just trying to find small pockets of joy, because again, there still can be chaos around you.
Always.
Which that will feed forward into our next episode. But before we close out, one of the things that really I thought was such a nice reminder in How to Raise a Mindful Eater was the section on why children crave carbs. And I just laugh because I even joke about it too, but I'm like, oh, adults will be like, what are you carb loading for? And I'm just like, for life. But really they are.
Fueling for the day.
Exactly. Because they're kind of demonized. Carbs are viewed to be not so great. And we've talked about this before, but they are such an important source of energy, particularly for growing brains. And children's brain development is explosive in those early years. And so I think being less concerned about the craving for carbs and focusing on the quality of the carbs that we are. Fruit has carbohydrates in it. Most dairy products have carbohydrates in it. Our grains, especially whole grains. So I think I don't want this, by saying carbohydrates are carbs, that we automatically think of cake or cookies or things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just, it's okay. Like when you're like, oh my gosh, you only ate the noodles. Okay.
That's good.
You ate the noodles. Not you only.
Yeah.
So I think just taking a breath, relaxing, and reminding ourselves that part of that just seems to be a little bit of normal development, and walking through a little bit of the science where as children got older, their preferences for the sweetness started to decrease a little bit. And so we don't need to talk negatively about it or make people feel shame for wanting to eat those types of foods. It's just on us as the adults then to figure out what that quality looks like for nourishing. All right, so to recap our pleasurable, more pleasant meal times, what are our tips and strategies for that?
So finding a ritual or a habit that works for you, and maybe that's saying grace or starting meal with a song, so that everyone can kind of set their mind and understand, like, okay, mealtime is happening, and then being in the moment and enjoying it and showing your gratitude for the meal, or again, taking a step back and showing gratitude and taking the focus off food for maybe the day, and then enjoying the company.
Yeah. And then incorporating those tasty foods, whatever those look like for you, figuring out what that looks like for your family in terms of boundaries for how often, and whether you say, okay, we have this amount offered, or occasionally letting them eat as much as their heart's desires of those types of foods. Those are ways that we can incorporate those. And as the holiday season will be coming forward, just push ourselves to maybe reframe how we think about things and still try to give these things a try. Great. I don't know about you, Anna, but I actually feel a little bit more relaxed.
I do too.
After this one, maybe because we've been talking about such lovely pleasant mealtime topics. But next time, for when those mealtimes are a little less pleasant.
Yes, the reality maybe.
Yeah, so this is what our Instagram, like what what we pretend they're like, and then
Perfect.
yes, and then I'm envisioning my children running around the table while I'm just sitting there trying to eat. That's what we'll tackle
The
next time.
dumpster fire.
The
in
dumpster,
background.
yes,
You're
yes.
just walking out like, here we are.
My hair is disheveled. Yeah. So next time, join us. We'll be talking about that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining. As always, if you have questions, if you want to share the topics that are on your minds, you can email us at
Snack Club, SNACKCLUB @uky.edu. And for resources or different ideas, check out the show notes. And as always, visit your extension office.
All right. We hope you'll join us again.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Snack Club. Resources related to the topics discussed in this episode can be found on our website, linked in the show notes. Your local cooperative extension office is also a wealth of information and can provide links to local resources.
If you have other topics you would like to hear about, send us a note at snackclub@uky.edu. That's snackclub@uky.edu. And as a reminder, the digestible bits of information we share are like navigation signs for your feeding journey, but you may need to contact a healthcare provider for more personal advice.
And last but not least, special thanks to our team behind the scenes. Mindy McCulley for bringing this audio and video file to life with her technology skills, and to the people through her marketing magic. And to Kelly Thompson for her creative ability to turn one conversation into our Snack Club symbol.
We hope to see you again soon.